Hello, we're on LetsDefend.io and we're doing the SOC analyst pathway, and after completing the web attacks modules there's a challenge that covers pretty much everything you've learned during those web attack modules. So it's investigate web attack. We're given an access log and told to investigate, determine what tools we used for their attack, what types of attacks, and were they successful, and was there any persistence. So we've been given access to the access.log, and as you can see it's rather huge, 15,000 lines of logs. I've already looked through this, and having a look, it jumps out quite quickly at us that the first tool, automated tool that was used was NIC2. You can see here it's an open source web scanning tool, or scans websites for vulnerabilities. So we can see here that it has been scanning from 192.168.199.2 as their attack IP. So that would be the answer to our first question. And that goes on for 12,000 lines. Lots of 404s. Trying every different path available. You can see in the logs too that this scanner does try some default attacks like XSS, LFI, all of those can be seen in here. But we'll get down to the next section. Okay. So what we can see now is it looks like it's no longer using the automated scanner, it's using another client. We can see the user data has been changed now to just emulating Mozilla compatible MS Internet Explorer 6 NT, and looking at all the 404s, it looks like they're just doing a directory scan. So what would be the second attack would be brute force directory scan, or directory brute force. Okay, so that would be the answer to our second question. And then what's the third attack after the directory listing brute force? So again, thousands of lines of code, we get past it all. And we'll see the 404s. And look here, we can see it's changed. Now it looks like it's login attempts. So we've got status 200, which doesn't mean that login was successful, but it means that the request for the login page was successful. It doesn't necessarily mean that credentials were successful. What we're looking for with the credentials being successful would be a redirect, so a code 302. So we could probably use grep on the access log to find this quickly, or looking at this log, there's not many lines left, so we could also just scroll down through, but definitely using grep would make life a bit easier. But here we go, we can see this login was successful. We can assume it was successful because it's a redirect 302, and then the redirect then goes to portal .php. So they have logged in at that point. So the answer to our question there would be, what was the third attack attempt? It was a brute force attempt. And was it successful? That line would confirm yes, it was successful. And then the fourth, what was the name of the fourth attack? And we can see here, even without decoding it, I mean, we can throw it into a decoder, but it is pretty readable in the plain text there. System net user, or add user. Let's decode it anyway, just to be 100% clear. Really, it's just going to get rid of the spaces, or add spaces, but be a bit easier to read. System net user hacker ASD123 exclamation mark / add. So they're using code injection to add a user to the system. Oops. Okay. So what would be the name of our fourth attack? It would be code injection. And then the last question would be, what is the first payload of the fourth attack? So this is the successful payload that gave them persistence, but they're asking what the first payload was. And so if we look here, I guess this was their first attempt to retrieve who am I. So who am I is the answer. And is there any persistency clue for the victim machine in the log file? If yes, what is the related payload? So that was the one we decoded. And so the answer would be there. %20 system, %27 net user hacker ASD123 / add. So that's, they were using remote code injection to add that user to the machine, and that means they'd be able to have persistence on the machine. And that's the answer to our last question. So just to confirm, we had everything correct. Nick2, directory brute force, yes, code injection, who am I, and the payload there. Okay, so the challenge was quite good, just based on the fact how large the log file was. It did take a while to go through it all, to pick everything out. You know, there was 7,000 lines of the initial scan of the machine, and then directory brute force for like another 7,000 lines, and then the real attack was just hidden away at the bottom there in like the last 10 lines. Even the brute force, there wasn't that many entries. So the log was rather large, but most of the information was towards the end of it. I think one lesson I would have learnt from this is that I could use grep to maybe make life a little bit easier. So maybe an example, like for the brute force, to see whether or not it was successful. Let's say they didn't crack it so quickly and so easily, like there was only about 100 lines to look through. But if there were 7,000 lines, it would take a while to go through it manually and try and spot the difference. But we could have used something like grep. We knew their attacker's IP, which was 172.168.199.2, and then access log, pipe that to grep again. And I mean, really, because it was filtering just their attacker's IP, we could probably even just search login and grep again for 302. Oops. And they're filtered out only that successful login. So utilizing grep on the access log is probably something I could improve upon to identify things a lot quicker, because that was an easy way to nearly instantly find out that there was a successful login. And we could tailor that for some of the other questions too. So maybe we could do the same thing, but grep minus IV, what was it, nick2, which would filter out those 7,000 lines of the initial scanning. Just make sure I'm right there. Oh, maybe we should pipe it to head just to show, like the first 50 lines just to see. But yeah, so that has now filtered out all those initial port scans, or it wasn't a port scan, sorry, but web server vulnerability scanning that was done by the automated nick2 app, sorry. So I think utilizing grep on the access log is definitely a way to speed up your analysis, and something I can improve on myself. But all in all, it was a good challenge that covered everything that was covered in the web attack modules. And hopefully if anyone was struggling with that, that's helped them understand how to pass this challenge and move on with your learning. Okay, thank you.